go, folks. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the March 15th, 2017 meeting of the Frederick County Planning Commission. And I will ask you if you'll join us in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We have an agenda to adopt. We have no changes.
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And we have a set of minutes from February the 15th.
Move we approve the February 15th, 2017 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Our next item, committee reports, had a little danger done to it by the weather, but we are delighted to have Shelley Wolf from the City of Winchester to report on their activities.
Yes, the Winchester Planning Commission is discussing a publicly initiated zoning ordinance text amendment pertaining to the definition of double frontage lots, special regulations regarding yards and accessory structures, in effect loosening those and providing citizens to request CUPs in that situation. And additionally, 2 temporary zoning permit renewals, both from Winchester Public Schools for mobile classroom units at Frederick Douglass Elementary School and Quarles. And we will vote on those on March 21st, a week from today.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Mr. Dunn from the Board of Supervisors.
Welcome to winter, Madam Chairman.
Yes. Thank you.
The Board of Supervisors last week passed rezoning number 217 for Express Oil Change and Tire Engineers, which was to rezone approximately 0.4 acres of land, and that was passed. The board also heard a report from the Planning Commission which said that both Freedom Manor and Southern Hills, which are Master Plan Development 0117 and 0317, are on track according to what's required.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. This is the time on our agenda. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to us on any subject other than the public hearing, we'd be delighted to have you. Seeing none, we will close the citizen comment portion. Our first item is a public hearing item. It's rezoning 01-17 for DMJ Holding LLC, submitted by Painter Lewis PLC to revise proffers associated with rezoning 05-09. This revision seeks to remove a proffer which currently prohibits fast food restaurants with drive-through service windows. The properties are located in the northwest corner of the intersection of Route 50 and Route 781 Custer Avenue. The properties are identified by property identification numbers 64A-4-16A, 64A-14, -4-16, 64A-4-17, 64A-4-18, 64A-4-19, and 64A-4-20 in the Shawnee Magisterial District. Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the Commission. This is an application to revise the proffers associated with rezoning 05 of 2009. This amendment proposes to remove a proffer from that 2009 rezoning that prohibited drive-throughs with fast food windows. If approved, the site would permit the construction of a fast food restaurant with a drive-through as long as all other conditions are met. And I would note that all other proffers from the 2009 rezoning remain the same. If I can direct you on the screen to your left, this is the proffer generalized development plan. Just to point out, you have Route 50 east in this location. You have Custer Avenue in this location, and the subject properties are here. Now, just one thing I would like to note with the rezoning, the 2009 as well as the current proffers have a requirement that states that whatever the use would be on the site, it cannot generate more than 200 vehicle trips per hour during any hour. Now, this proffer, as I stated, remains unchanged from the 2009 rezoning. And I would note that if a fast food restaurant is constructed on the property, this would most likely cap out that 200 hourly trip, and therefore the remainder of the site would probably remain undeveloped without them having to come forward with a subsequent rezoning. So tonight, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a recommendation from the commission to forward to the board. I would be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. John Lewis is here on behalf of the application. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Question,
Yes, sir.
if, if this would be approved by the planning commission and the board, and they build a fast food restaurant with a 200 trip per day max, they come back in a year from now and want to put a doctor's office in or something else that can be approved. Who is the trip police that tells them or that can verify whether, they say we only have 160 trips a day. How do we adjudicate that?
This is based on, like, the ITE manual for that use, so that's where that cap would be. And if they wanted to then have something else, they would have to come back through the rezoning process.
So they couldn't put a traffic counter in and come in and say, here's our traffic counter, we only generate 160 trips a day. We are allowed to have 40 more trips, so we want to build something else.
No, we've had some rezonings in the past that have said, if they want to do trip counters, they can. This rezoning doesn't have that statement.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question, Ms. Perkins? Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Well, good evening. I really don't have much to add from our last month's presentation, so I will note that Mr. Phelps, Mr. Don Phelps, and Mr. Josh Phelps are here tonight and would entertain any questions you might have, as will I.
Anyone with a question? Don't see it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, and we would like to open it. Would anyone in the audience like to speak regarding this rezoning? Anyone at all? Yes.
Hi, I'm Josh Phelps. I'm the J of DMJ Holdings, and D is over there. M could not be here tonight. Thank you all for considering our proffer amendment. When we bought this property in 2005, like everything else at that time when the economy was wonderful, we thought we had an opportunity to become real estate tycoons. And what we couldn't foresee was about an 18-month rezoning process and then the crash of 2008. So we've been sitting on the thing ever since. We wouldn't be here tonight asking for this amendment if we weren't being approached by potential buyers who want to put a drive-through window on the property. It's not just one, we've had multiple requests for that. The most interested party to the trip count question, the most interested party we have is quite an established operation. They have statistics they provided us. Their max 1 hour in a major metropolitan area, which would be large cities like Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta, places like that, is 170 trips per hour during 1 hour of their day, and that's it. So they know what they're talking about when it comes to their trip counts. The biggest reason we would like to be able to find a way to unload the property, we own a business here called Winchester Metals. Our LLC owns the real estate where that sits, and we are in need of expanding that business. And we would like to be able to use the proceeds from being able to sell this property. And this just seemed like the quickest way to be able to do it was this proffer amendment. If it doesn't pass, I guess, maybe some other person will come along someday, but we think this is the quickest way for us to get there, and we hope that the commission can find its way to helping us get there somehow tonight. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to us regarding this rezoning? Well, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we need to make a decision.
Madam Chair, I support approval of this application. I think they've done everything that they can. I don't see why it's a rezoning. I think it's a proper revision. And all the setbacks have been adhered to, and I think it's a good plan. I recommend, make a motion to approve applicant 01-17 for DMJ Holding.
I agree, I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to recommend approval. Mr. Triplett?
Triplett, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Clyde, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Marston, yes.
And the chair votes yes. This will go to the Board of Supervisors on April the 12th. Thank you.
Just a note to clarify on that last action, the reason we wanted to make that a public hearing was because of the impact on the surrounding neighborhood. And nobody showed up, so we gave them the chance.
Okey doke.
I have a question.
Sir,
The agenda states that this is in Shawnee, is it not? It's in Redbud, is that correct?
Correct, it's in the Red Bud District.
Thank you.
That's what I thought.
okay. Our next item is also a public hearing item. It's conditional use permit 02-17 for Salvador. Would you give me the pronunciation of his last name?
Carano.
Carano. Mr. Salvador Carano, which submitted for a rooming house that's Airbnb. The property is located at 132 Seabreeze Lane, Winchester, and is identified with property identification number 54I-7-1-90 in the Shawnee Magisterial District. Mr. Klein,
And to correct, it is in the Red
Red
Bud
Bud.
District, yes.
sorry.
So this is property at 132 Seabreeze Lane in Winchester. It's in the Red Bud District and is presently zoned RP, or residential performance. Its current land use is residential. It's a single-family attached townhome. And the proposed use this evening is an Airbnb rental, or as our ordinance calls it, a rooming house or boarding house, for one bedroom being designated as a short-term rental for out-of-town guests. Here's an overview of the site. The property is located at the end of Seabreeze Lane in the Windstone Townhome community. The property has a fenced backyard and is surrounded by like property, including open space and other single-family attached townhomes. This application for a conditional use permit is in response to a zoning violation complaint of a rooming house or Airbnb rental that was received by staff. Obtaining a conditional use permit for this use is an available option to resolve the zoning complaint. A rooming house is a permitted use in the RP, or residential performance zoning district, through an approved conditional use permit process. This proposed use will take place within an existing 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhome, with one room being rented at any given time. The applicant has 2 dedicated parking spaces for his unit, number 132, and has a dedicated rental room and kitchenette in the walkout basement, reserved for Airbnb guests. I will note that the applicant also got a certificate of occupancy from the Building Inspections Department for a bedroom in the basement. Additional visitor parking spaces are also available in the immediate vicinity of the unit and are common shared parking among the Windstone community. Should the Planning Commission find this use to be appropriate, staff would recommend the following conditions to which the applicant has agreed. All review agency comments shall be complied with at all times. No more than one room shall be rented at any given time. No employees other than those residing on the premises are allowed with this use. No signage is allowed with this use, and any expansion or change in the use shall require the approval of a new conditional use permit. I'm happy to answer any questions you have this evening, and the applicant, Salvatore Carano, is also here this evening. Thank you.
Questions of Mr. Klein? Any? Yes, Mr. Thomas.
A short-term rental, is that 3 days, 5 days, 30 days, 180 days,
Less than 30 days.
less than 30?
And most of his rentals, and I'll let the applicant speak to them through Airbnb, it's usually a weekend or a couple of weeknights. It's not going to be kind of where he's subletting his use or anything to that extent.
That is defined somewhere in the county?
It is defined in the zoning ordinance, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No more than one room. Is there a limit on how many can be in that room?
His certificate of occupancy is for 2 within that room. So he has I believe he has a queen bed in there, and so there could be 2 individuals, and it's that one room is his designated bedroom for the Airbnb rental.
Mr. Klein, you stated this was a result of a violation. Of course, They don't have a conditional use permit. How long had that been in the process, do you know?
It wasn't an official violation in that we got like a written response. It was someone called and tipped us off. We looked it up, went out there and got in touch with the applicant or the owner of the property and let him know that to come in compliance with the zoning ordinance, he would need to get a conditional use permit. That was brought to our attention in December. He's worked through that process. It took a little bit longer than expected, because he needed a certificate of occupancy for the bedroom through the building inspections department. So once he got that certificate of occupancy, he proceeded with the application, and he's done everything that we've asked of him to get into compliance, and we appreciate that.
Any other questions? Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak to us? Yes.
Hello. How's everybody doing this evening?
Fine.
Would you give us your name for the record, please?
Sure, absolutely. Salvatore Carano. Not too sure how much time I have, but Tyler did a great job, and I'd like to thank him very kindly for that. Also, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to be heard in this forum this evening. I want to say thank you again to Tyler and David in the Planning and Zoning Department for being extremely helpful. Also want to thank everybody else involved, including Coventry Group and the Windstone Homeowners Association. I want to state as well, again, to piggyback on what Tyler has said, that I've complied with all of the department's needs and comments, in particular the inspections department. I've built a new floating deck onto the property as requested by the inspections department. I've also complied with a smoke detector as well as a CO detector, including hanging a fire extinguisher in the facility. So again, also with the I believe from what the complaint was, and to be frank, is like a parking situation. And as stated again, you know, there are 2 designated spots, one of which I have 1 vehicle, and the other is for an Airbnb guest, of which at all times I've only had 1 vehicle. But other than that, I mean, I just, you know, again, I appreciate the opportunity. It is safe. That's one thing I really wanted to reiterate. Their license is uploaded onto the website. Their payment information is loaded onto the website. I also am blessed to work for the federal government, so I'd like to definitely comply with all of their requests as far as, you know, having a roommate per se for that short amount of time. So other than that, I mean, I have wonderful support here from the HOA. Curtis is right behind me there, and I also have a previous guest that has stayed with me, and one of the greatest nicknames that I've ever heard, and his name is Chill. So we all thought that was pretty cool. And, you know, a wonderful guy, and I'm very happy that he's here with me this evening, as well as my girlfriend, who's been a tremendous support throughout this as well. So I'm very new to this, and this has been pretty awesome. So I thank you again to be able to give the opportunity to state what I'm trying to do.
Yes. Any questions for Mr. Carano?
That's not thought.
Any? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this conditional use permit?
It's your turn.
Anyone at all?
Your turn.
Yes, sir. If you'll give us your name?
Yes, my name is Curtis Spriggs. I am the Windstone HOA president. Forgive my appearance. I was shoveling snow when Sal reminded me the hearing was tonight. So Sal made it known to us of the situation that was going on. We had a meeting to discuss amongst the board what the situation was. Our main concern was the parking, and that there was no signage, and that there was no noise complaints. Once we reviewed our documents, once we reviewed the parking situation, it was in compliance. The board voted, and we approved it from the board's point of view. So that was all we had to say on the matter.
Great. Any questions? Don't see any. Thank you for coming. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this conditional use permit? Anybody? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I do have a question, and I can't remember, it was a year or so ago, and maybe staff can help me. We had a subdivision, a lady came in, similar, this went in a townhouse. And we did all have some reservations about how that had moved forward and what have you, similar situation, violation, then one for permit. if we take these as they come to us, and we always seem like we find them through a violation. Granted, that's the only way you can find out, because most people do not know what they have to go through. But then we're put here in this position to correct a wrong, or it seems like we're trying to correct a wrong. And yet, what if everyone in that row of townhouse decided to have an Airbnb? Is that allowed?
Theoretically, yes, they'd all have to go through a conditional use permit process, so you'd be evaluating them based on their own merits. You could also take into consideration that there are other existing Airbnbs, and, you know, obviously getting some input from the HOA would be a good start there as well to see what their concerns may be. In this case, he does have the full support of the HOA. He has been compliant with everything that we've asked. The case that you're speaking to was a rooming house, boarding house, bed and breakfast type use last March. I don't know the ins and outs of that case entirely, but it was denied by this group. A little bit of a different situation because it was in a different area of the county, and she was seeking to rent the entire unit, whereas he's just renting one bedroom for 2 occupants with 1 vehicle. So it's a little bit of a different situation. But that would be the comparison.
But theoretically, we could have however many
Theoretically,
residential units in Windstone, we could have
theoretically,
everybody be an Airbnb.
correct. Theoretically, yes, anyone who would want to have that type of a rental would need to come and get a conditional use permit, which, you know, requires some hoops. So it's definitely something that, you know, people that are really motivated will go through, but not everyone will go through.
Okay.
That,
I guess, yeah.
that is my concern too. And do we really want that? That's the concern I have. Is that the direction that we want to go to in this situation? I'm not sure that that's what I would want.
Sure, from at least a land use perspective, it is supported by the comprehensive plan. This area of the county is planned for residential. The primary use continues to be residential. He is the owner of the property. It's a townhome community. And, you know, this Airbnb is a temporary, you know, temporary rentals. He's not renting it out every night. He's not necessarily renting it out every weekend. It's intermittent.
It's America.
I think also, excuse me, our example that you brought up, Mr. Triplett, the one major difference was that the homeowners association did not support it at all.
I would say, too, you don't have any neighbors. You know, it was advertised. All the adjacent properties were notified. The HOA has been aware of it. We didn't receive any objections to the application this evening.
Well, the concern at the other one was also seeing strange cars and people, and they were concerned because of the children in that area.
But I think the good thing about this one, and the big distinction is, Mr. Carano is going to live there also.
Yes.
The other one, the person that owned it wasn't going to live there, going to rent the whole place out. So, you know, whether she came once a day or twice a day, she really wasn't there in the evenings knowing what was going on. Mr. Carano will be there. You know, I don't think it's a precedent it's something that's already allowed, so we're not setting a precedent, doing something out of the normal or out of the, you know, something unusual. So it's more or less, you know, in this case, there's no neighbors here. The homeowners association concurs with it, doesn't have a problem with it. And, you know, the demand will take care of the rest, I think, of our concerns.
Thank you.
Anyone?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to move for approval, excuse me, 217 for Salvador Guerrero.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval for this conditional use permit. Any other comments? Mr. Marston?
Marston, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Klein, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Kenny, no.
Triplett, no.
The chair votes yes. This also will go to the Board of Supervisors on the 12th of April. Thank you. Okay, our next item is an information item, and it deals with medical offices in the RP Residential Performance District and RA Rural Areas District as conditional use. Discussion on revisions to the Frederick County zoning ordinance to allow medical offices in the RP and RA districts. Mr. Klein.
Yes, this is the first of three information and discussion items this evening regarding ordinance amendments. This is a proposed amendment to Chapter 165 of the zoning ordinance to add medical offices as a conditional use in the RP Residential Performance and RA Rural Areas Zoning District. Currently, this use, medical offices, is permitted by right in the B1 Neighborhood Business and B2 General Business zoning districts. Staff has drafted an amendment to add medical offices as a conditional use in the RP and RA districts. Supplemental use regulations have also been drafted that would correspond to the use. These additional requirements could be added through a conditional use permit process if necessary. Some of the supplemental uses that we've considered and added to the regulations is adherence to B2 district parking and design standards, and buffer and screening requirements as determined by the zoning administrator. The Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this amendment at their January meeting. The DRRC agreed that the proposed changes and the item was forwarded to the Planning Commission for discussion. Staff is seeking comments from the Planning Commission to forward to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Any comments from the commission? Any
Yeah.
suggestions? Yes, Mr. Thomas.
I don't have a problem with it in the RA district by conditional use permit, but I really don't think we should be allowing offices in residential areas. Traffic problems, I just don't see that we need that. We have enough traffic problems already in residential areas. Why do we want to put a destination office in a residential area when we have plenty of other places to put them? It's not like we're running out of other areas to put medical offices. And I don't think it's a good idea. I will oppose it always. Again, in rural areas, I don't have a problem with it because some rural areas are a distance out, and if they need a medical office building, I could understand that. But our residential areas, the RP zoning areas, I don't see that this fits. I don't think it's a match, and I don't think that's why people move into a residential area to have a medical office building next to them.
Anyone else with comments that Mr. Klein can take back to the board?
Well, there's always the question of precedence. I mean, what happens, there are other professions,
Yeah.
attorneys,
The,
CPAs.
Currently, those type of uses are not allowed in the RP district. It would, again, require an ordinance type amendment to get them added. Medical office, we use the SIC codes for that, and there are included in your attachments were the SIC categories, but it includes things like dentists, chiropractors, which is the reason for the initiation of the ordinance change. We had a property owner come forward asking for chiropractor uses to be allowed in the RP district. General medical offices, those type of uses would be allowed. Veterinary offices are allowed in the RP, so as a comparison, I know it's a little bit different in terms of care, but the intensity of the use is quite similar. I will speak to Mr. Thomas's question real quickly, and then we can move on. It is a conditional use permit, so at such time that we did get an application, it would go through VDOT comment in addition to staff comment, and it would require a public hearing, so there'd be an opportunity for neighbors if they were concerned about traffic or parking to come forward. Also, an opportunity for you all to debate the merits or challenges of individual sites that were seeking a conditional use permit.
Anyone else? Thank you. Our next item is also an information discussion item. It's permitted and conditional uses in the RA Rural Areas District. This is a discussion on the revisions to the Frederick County Ordinance on permitted and conditional uses, supplemental regulations, and definitions of new uses in the RA zoning district. Mr. Klein.
Yes, this is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow additional by right and conditional uses in the RA Rural Areas District. This effort seeks to expand and to clarify the opportunities available for small businesses and agritourism in our rural areas. This effort is supportive of the goals and strategies expressed in the 2035 Comprehensive Plan for the county's rural areas and agribusiness development sections. Staff has drafted an amendment to the RA zoning district to include clarification for already permitted uses. We've included agritourism, commercial stables, and equestrian facilities, cut-your-own tree farms, and on-premise wayside stands that are accessory to a bona fide farm. We've also added additional conditional uses, including farm stays, special event facilities, commercial archery ranges, standalone ice cream parlors, bakeries, and craft and gift shops that are not part of a country store or a bona fide farm. We've added new definitions to accompany the new uses, including adding clarification for agritourism. Staff has also drafted supplementary use regulations that would apply to the special event centers, including submission of an illustrative sketch plan with the conditional use permit application, securement of the necessary building permit for all new or proposed structures, requirements for designated travel aisles and parking spaces, screening of portable restroom facilities, and a requirement for adjacent owner consent where the property would have shares of private access easement for the use. The DRRC discussed this amendment at length at their January and February meetings. Staff also sought out input from various property owners, including Cloverdale Barn, Marker Miller, Trumpet Farms, the Virginia Tech Cooperative Extension, and the Frederick County Tourism Office. The DRC agreed with the proposed changes, and the item was forwarded to the Planning Commission for discussion. Staff is seeking any comments from the Planning Commission this evening to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I think this is a great idea.
I'd like to comment, I do believe staff has did a great job, and because we did at DRC have some consternations about some of these. They did bring the people in, community, and I think a great job was done by staff and people in the committee. And I do believe the Cloverdale, was that the people that was there? They were in agreement, so it showed the community, everybody worked together, and good result, I think, came of this.
Comments, thank you.
Mr. Klein, help me out here a little bit. When we do these ordinance changes and updates and this type thing, is it usually triggered by someone requesting something in this direction, or is it staff looking at improvements? What really triggers these things?
It's both. In this case, it was a culmination of a lot of different feedback that we have received. One area that you all may be aware of is currently, especially for special events in the rural areas, it requires a new special event permit on an annual basis. That's a time-consuming process, and it's hard for the owners who are requesting them to make investments in their property with the uncertainty that lies with having a new special event facility on a special event permit on an annual basis. By getting a conditional use for a property like Cloverdale Barn, there's some assurances that they're going to meet our zoning ordinance requirements and all of our code standards, and two, they can make an investment on their end knowing that they're in compliance and they're not going to be subject to an annual review. Some of the uses, such as farm stays, that was one that was requested by the tourism office. Special event facility is one that we've gotten from Cloverdale Barn and Trumpet Farms. And other ones are just kind of, we did some research and looked at other like communities, Albemarle County, Fauquier County, Rockingham County, and we had a pretty extensive use list that we took to the DRC in January. They whittled that use list down, and then we came back in February with a revised ordinance and the definitions and supplemental uses. So
Good, okay.
Anything else you'd like for Mr. Klein to share with the board?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, next item is also an information and discussion item, front setbacks on private rights-of-way. Discussion on revisions to the Frederick County zoning ordinance on the reduction of the required setback for accessory structures on private right-of-ways. Mr. Klein.
Yep. This is a proposed amendment that was proposed at the January DRC meeting by a committee member for an amendment to the zoning ordinance to reduce the front setback for accessory structures in the RA Rural Areas District. Staff has drafted an amendment to the RA zoning district to reduce the required front setback for accessory uses and structures where the property is adjacent to private rights-of-way from 60 feet as currently permitted to 45 feet, which was consistent with the front setbacks for rural preservation lots. This was an effort to make it consistent with other parts of the ordinance and to provide some relief where they're on private right-of-way. The DRRC discussed this amendment at their February meeting, and the DRRC agreed with the proposed changes, and the item has been forwarded to the Planning Commission for discussion. Staff is seeking any comments from the Planning Commission to be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors.
Any comments for Mr. Klein? Any? Nope. No comments. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are at the end of our agenda, and let's see, what shall we share? We will be having a meeting on April the 5th, so we'll be prepared to be here, and hopefully we'll all not have a way to get here, so. And it was kind of unusual that we made the effort to hold a public hearing, and for the first item that we had, and this was the first use of our postponing something, which I think went smoothly. I'm just sorry that our audience didn't pick up on it, but I think that was a good thing. Anything else? Anything else?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you all. And thank you for making the effort to come.
King.